Annalisa, I'm really glad you're here, and I appreciate you sending me a book ahead of time so I could read through it. There were lots of things I could spend all afternoon talking to you about this, but we'll try to stay on topic. But the name of the book is Storytelling for Pantsers, and of course that got my attention. I thought, what in the world's a pantser? And the more I read, you're really talking about outlining, people who outline when they write, or people who, like you say, fly by the seat of their pants, which I thought was a cute analogy. But what made you decide to write a book focusing on, it's primarily for pantsers?
Yes, so there are a lot of books out there for outliners, how to outline, but these poor pantsers, and there are many of them, don't have a home. They're frustrated. Many of them feel like they're not real writers. Some of them, unfortunately, are made by the writing community to feel like they're not real writers. And I had a real heart for that because these people have stories to tell. They can tell their stories well. And I wanted them to see that there was a way out of the murky, murky mess, as I call it, for them to find their story, to really be able to see their novel, that it's an acceptable way to fly by the seat of their pants. And it's been very gratifying, Sheryl, to get feedback from people who really have found a home
Who
in this book.
found someone who understands them.
Indeed.
And you say yourself that you're a pantser for some types of writing.
I am. When I write fiction, my creativity is just as wonky as most other people that I've seen. I can't seem to write a novel in order to save my life. And that's just the way it is. And coming to terms with my own creative process helped me have empathy for other pantsers and also to help them to find a process.
You say that people have been told you outline everything. How do you get them to unthink that way when you're a writing coach? And so how do you sort of retrain their brain?
That's a really interesting question. So in all forms of writing, there must be an organizational phase. And this is the misconception. There's always organization. I mean, otherwise we've got some sort of out
Chaos.
there, like postmodern, drop the magnetic poetry on the floor and see what happens kind of a novel. We don't want that. We want a novel with a clear beginning, middle, and end that has a clear story. So in order to do that, there must be an organizational phase. The misconception is where that organizational phase has to take place. And many people say it must be at the beginning, you must create an outline, and that's just not true. You can have a large creative phase before you start to move into organization, and organization doesn't have to mean an outline. It can mean a lot of things. And that's what I help writers to find is, what does that mean when you really dig into that murky, murky mess? How are we going to organize it to make it a novel?
I can see how that would be difficult to do, and also very reassuring to the prospective writer that there's hope, so to speak. Do you ever find, because you do talk something about an inner critic, and but sometimes I think maybe all of us have gone or experienced the fact that we've sort of been put down so many times that it's hard to get that self-confidence to write again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that's also a misconception around writing and probably a lot of other forms of creativity is that we just have to stop being afraid. We have to push that fear aside. And that's not exactly right. I call it coming into right relationship with your inner critic, because the inner critic can be helpful to us. The inner critic is the part of our brain that keeps us from running into traffic, right? So we want to have that inner critic. At the same time, she's a she for me, when she's whispering in my ear and saying, that's no good, nobody's going to like that, that's not helpful to me. So to come into right relationship with my inner critic, I need to find confidence based on competence, knowing what it is that I do very well as a writer.
Well, that makes more sense. I jotted down this comment. It says, failure is part of the learning process. And I know, we've heard people say you don't fail unless you just don't get up and try again. But if you've written, say, 68 partial books and you've dwelt on the same chapter over and over and over, it's like, how do you get over that hump?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we help a lot of writers with. They've got a lot of partially complete projects. They can't seem to get to that phase where they've got a complete project. And you're right, a lot of times it comes from fear. And you would think it would be fear of failure, but a lot of times it's fear of success. What's my life going to look like when I have that book out in the world? What's it going to look like when I've achieved that dream? What's it going to look like when I hold my book with my name on it? That's really scary for a lot of people.
I guess
and
it
so
would
we
be.
help them to move through all of those fears by really looking at them and talking about them and addressing them as real.
Well, in the title of this segment, it said simple neuroscience-based exercises. So what do you mean by exercising for writers?
Well, keeping your brain in shape is one of the best things that you can do for your writing. And one of the really important things, Sheryl, and this is going to surprise you, but your brain lives in liquid and it's surrounded by water. So by the time you feel thirsty, your brain is already dehydrated. So staying really hydrated is one of the best things you can do. And here's a really simple exercise I'm going to show you right now that you could do. It is standing up.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we stand, we are bringing oxygen to our brain. And when we bring oxygen to our brain, we're creating rich ground, fertile ground for creativity. It was that easy,
Just the
to
movement
stand
of it.
up. Yeah, and so the third thing is that many of us know that our brain has two hemispheres. There's also a misconception about being right-brained and left-brained. We've debunked that, but it stays with us in popular culture. However, it is true that we do have two hemispheres. We've got a midline down the middle of our brain and synaptic movement that goes between our two hemispheres. When we've got increased synaptic movement, we've got fertile ground for creativity. So something really, really simple that we can do is anytime that we're crossing the midline of our body. So something as simple as moving our hand diagonally across our body, right? And there are a lot of exercise groups that do this, right? Tai Chi makes a lot of cross body movement. Yoga makes a lot of cross body movement. We're creating synaptic movement. Do you feel more creative?
Yes, already.
And so,
But
you know,
do you, should it be like every half an hour of writing, then you stand up and get some motion going?
it can be. I think if you get to a moment where you say, "Oh, what's he gonna do next?" You know, just stand up and start to think about it.
character.
You know, if we, right? Yes, the character, or you know, is the bad guy gonna come in now? I don't know. I'm just gonna, you know, start doing some work. If you like to get really creative, you know, you can pretend like you're painting magic eights in the air. That also helps. You could literally
Because
paint
it's
magic
crossing
eights.
that
You're
center
crossing,
line.
You're crossing that center line multiple times. That's a really simple activity we can do to create synaptic movement and enhance creativity.
Well, thank you for letting us know about that. That doesn't seem like much, but I'm sure after it's practiced, it would be very helpful.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.